Was there ever a moment where either one of you said, "Do we wanna put the Rob Zombie ones in here?"
I would have.
So Cliff, man, again, thank you for giving me some time, man. And
Sure.
is that
My pleasure.
I gotta ask, is that an original Texas chainsaw back there?
Yeah, signed by most of the cast. Yeah,
You're kidding me.
I know.
How much does something like that go for now? Like if I wanted to buy an original poster of TCM.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've had it for decades, and it is original. And there was a convention in Glendale, California, and most everybody was there except for Toby.
Yeah.
Um, and I met Toby when we did the Life Force transfer, and I wish I had taken it along with me, but oh well.
Oh. So Cliff, man, for the people wondering, I guess I want to. I asked you this, but I was going to see if you could give me a little bit more information. So the other day, maybe it was a week ago, I'm not sure, but I'd like to go back and do retrospectives on really important physical media releases in my collection and things like that. And I did one on the Halloween 15 disc box set. How did that video come onto your radar?
How did your video? I think I
Ye-
saw it on Facebook, and I was just, it was really a nice video, and so that's why I reached out just to thank you about it because it was kind of cool, especially after all these years that somebody was talking about that set.
That's cool. I guess somebody must have shared it because I don't really post a whole lot of stuff on Facebook. But yeah, when you reached out, your name sounded very familiar. And then when I saw your message, I was like, oh, damn. It makes me wonder. I got to be, I'm always glad it's something positive that I say when
No,
somebody
yeah.
finds it. Because I had the same thing happen with Anthony Massey. I did a video about Halloween 25 Years of Terror, and we ended up having a great conversation. I reached out to him, and he reached out to me, and we got to talk. So Cliff, I would love to kind of learn about you and what you've done in your career
Sure.
and that sort of thing. And if I could ask, I was looking into you, and you've been a busy guy, and I was looking on this website called LinkedIn, and I was saying to myself, how long has Cliff been working in physical media and doing the things he's doing? Can you kind of just tell me, like, when you get done with high school, what was the plan? Like, what were you trying to get into? Because to do what you do seems like it's like this underground world that I wouldn't even know how to get in.
Yeah, I mean, it was really never anything I was looking for. I spent starting when I got my first job was an usher in a movie theater, of course, because I've always been a movie nerd. And I did that for like about 9 years. And then I decided, I don't want to spend the rest of my life because I moved up all the way to manager. And I didn't want to spend the rest of my life as a movie theater manager. So I thought about going back to school and ended up in Sacramento. And that's where Tower Records was born. And so I got a part time job at Tower Video.
Yeah.
And I think it was like within about a year and a half, I moved from a store to the corporate office. Uh, and I ended up becoming the buyer for all the Tower Record stores for home video. So I did that for a few years, and then one of our vendors that came in that sold us content um, said, "Hey, would you like to move to LA and work for us?" And I thought, "Wow, sure." And so I made the move to LA and started working for a company called Ventura Distribution. And they did things like Tybo and
Like the exercise VHS tapes.
yeah, Girls Gone Wild and
Hell yeah.
lovely stuff like that. And so during my time there, I started acquiring content to sort of put under a label, and I through a friend of mine, I picked up Audition. That was like the first big title that we did, and then I picked up a bunch of Sonny Chiba movies,
Yeah.
which did really well for us. And that was 2000. And
Can I
then in
real quick? Can I
yeah,
break down something about your time working at Tower Records when
yeah,
you were there? Because I find
yeah.
this really again, this is fascinating to me. You said you became the guy that was basically in charge of grabbing titles from different companies for the stores. Now, how did you become the guy? I imagine that's not something that was intended at first, but you probably got a reputation for being, oh, if you have a question about a movie at the store, go ask Cliff. Am I right about that? Or
Yeah, I mean, while I was at the store, I ended up in a specific store. I ended up being the Laserdisc buyer, and at the time, nobody really knew a lot about Laserdiscs, and I did. So that's sort of how I first got moved to the corporate office, was to be in charge of all the Laserdiscs for the chain. So I buy from the studios. We had stores in Japan, so I brought in imports from Japan. So
oh
started at
man,
Laserdiscs. The person that was doing VHS, VHS, got moved up to the games buyer. So just because of my knowledge of movies, they moved me into the VHS buyer position, and then Tower was one of the test stores, and I think 1997 for a DVD.
yeah.
So we were the test stores for physical DVD sections. So I did that as well,
So
and then I
so
left in 2000.
yeah, okay. So I got into collecting laser discs about 14 years ago, and everything was really cheap when I got into it. Now everything's so collector and
Yeah.
expensive. I remember it took me probably a year just to find a New Blood, the laser disc for that on eBay, and I found like one copy, and I've got it's the only one I've ever seen. I think they may be able to find them now, but take me back to 1990. So when was your tenure there? From 90, what was it, 90 to 97 or
Was
something?
88 to 2000.
88. Can you kind of break down when you think the best years were for Laserdisc selling, or was it always super, super niche? Because a lot of people, Cliff, may tell you, I don't even remember seeing Laserdiscs back in the day.
No, it was pretty niche. You know, it's almost like your 4K collector nowadays. You know, you hear a lot of 4K fans, oh, why aren't they putting that on 4K? Why are they even bothering to do it on Blu-ray? Why don't they do it right to 4K? Because even though there's a lot of 4K releases, it's still a small audience. DVDs are the number one seller right now. Blu-rays are next, and then it's 4K.
Mhm.
So 4K is still a niche market, and so was Laserdisc. And the thing you have to remember about Laserdisc is like a Criterion Laserdisc, which was CAV. So there was only, I think, 20 minutes or 30 minutes per side.
Right.
We're selling for like 124.95, on their release, and you hear people complain now, oh my god, it's $30. It's like, you should have been around in the Laserdisc days. You literally had to save your money to buy one title.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it was always very niche. It really was, and it wasn't a very big section in the store, just because it really was a
Were you
niche
a
buyer.
Laserdisc guy yourself? I'm assuming you
Oh
probably
yeah, I had thousands at one point. Yeah,
do. You
yeah.
still have a collection of them that you've kept on to,
I
maybe?
have a small amount, but just since everything's gone to first DVD, then Blu-ray, now 4K, I don't keep most of them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got rid of most of them.
So you go to this new company. I mean, were you nervous to make a big jump like that? I mean, because with Tower Records, you'd been there for so long, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw the writing on the wall at Tower way before, it dissolved. Um, the company was trying to grow too quickly, and they were putting out a lot of money to open new stores, and there just was this weird feeling that this wasn't gonna survive. So when I had the opportunity, yeah, it was a huge move to Los Angeles, and but it was the right thing to do. And then Tower Records was gone like 3 or 4 years later.
During your time at that store too, I remember I got a little bit taste of Tower Records. I grew up in New Orleans, so pre-Katrina, I was in
Yeah,
St. Bernard Parish, so I was and we had a tower,
yeah.
and my uncle would tell me all the time, and around 96, 97, he would see John Goodman in the store because John Goodman had a property, lakefront property in New Orleans. In your store, was it a normal occurrence to see, I don't know, X celebrity come in?
Oh, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, the store that was on Sunset Boulevard here in town, they would actually close, but stay open for not only Elton John but Michael Jackson, and they would and those guys would just come in and shop while the store was closed, so they weren't bothered by people. Um, oh yeah.
Do you have any cool memories from that? Somebody that you became befriended that was you never thought they would be as chill as they were or something like that?
No, well, I was in Sacramento where the company was based, and so we we didn't have any celebrities in Sacramento.
Oh, really? Nothing in
So, but I
Sacramento?
heard all, no, but I heard all the stories about the Sunset Record Store, and I remember being in the Sunset Record Store one time, and John Carpenter was in there. I was there for some sort of in store or something like that, and John was there just shopping.
Wow, that's crazy. So getting to this, you go to this new company. It was called it was BCI.
No,
Not
At first it was Ventura
no,
Distribution.
Ventura Distribution,
Yeah.
and Navarre. So you become an acquisitions guy there.
Yeah, at first I was at Ventura. I was the product managers because in the beginning Ventura was just a distributor. So
Okay.
companies would come to Ventura and ask them to distribute their product into retail. So we weren't doing our own stuff. Probably the last year or so that I was there is when we started doing acquisitions of our own content.
Do you remember anything specific acquisition wise that was a big deal for you during that time, or?
Definitely Audition because it had just come
Right, right.
off a theatrical run, um, and it did very well for us. Yeah, that's probably the biggest title that I had when I was at Ventura.
And you were there
And then
for
I
5
forgot how
years?
many, 4 or 5 years. Yeah, the writing was on the wall there as well. I do have a very good knack for jumping before. So
Well, that's very
I,
interesting that you say that, but we'll get there.
So I left there too before it imploded, and joined a company called BCI, which was right down the street from, from Ventura. So I was very lucky. There were two video companies
No
in
kidding.
Newberry Park, California, not, a mecca for home entertainment.
Yeah.
But I joined them, and they had primarily been a budget company known as Brentwood. And then they sort of changed their name and started doing their own content. And we licensed He Man and the Masters of the Universe, which was huge. It really made that company explode into
Really?
a
Yeah.
huge company. Um, and then that's while I was there, I brought in more Sonny Chiba product and Ultraman. Um, and some movies here and there. But Brentwood was upside down because of some ridiculous, shady things somebody had done, and they were upside down, and Navarre couldn't close the company because of the loss that they would take in the
Jeez.
stock market, because Navarre was a publicly traded company. So they actually had to keep us open because of that. Well, then in 2008, yes, was the stock market crash. So
Right.
Navarre took the opportunity to, since their stock went in the toilet anyways, to shut down BCI. And so I was out of a job in Christmas 2008. It was really nice to lose your job at Christmas time. And I was lucky enough at that point to talk to a friend of mine who had come looking for a job at BCI once.
Mm-hmm.
And his name was Jordan Fields, and he was working at Shout Factory. So I contacted him when I was out of a job, and like a month later, I had an interview, and about a month after that, I was working at Shout Factory.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Didn't skip a beat.
yeah, yeah.
And you were
Well,
aware of
a
Shout
good.
Factory before that point?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I was never a big collector of TV series, and that's what Shout was known for,
Right.
was putting out box sets of Leave It to Beaver and Spin City and things like that. And so it was, when I joined the company, it was, not necessarily something that I was extremely passionate about, doing television box sets, but I started doing work on those. And then right before I left BCI, I was, when I lost my job at BCI, was talking to MGM,
Oh
a
yeah.
guy who I knew at MGM, and they were going to license us a package of movies, and we would have been the first, non studio to license some movies from MGM. So when I, joined Shout Factory, we were working with MGM because we did um, the Patty Duke Show and American Gladiators and, and
I
all
love it.
these
I love American
silly TV
Gladiators.
shows. And so I said, hey, remember this deal we were talking about when I was at BCI? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I said, can we, do that deal here at Shout Factory? And they said, sure. So that was sort of the first film deal I did at Shout Factory, was MGM. Then we had been in business with Universal for TV shows.
Right.
So I put together a list of movies, and I said, hey, could we license these? And that included Halloween 2, Halloween 3, They Live. And so that sort of was the beginning of Scream Factory. Plus, right around this same time, I jumped a little too far ahead. Um, I don't know if you remember this. Disney picked up the Roger Corman library, and it was very obvious that nobody there knew anything about the library. So,
Right.
I mean, they put out Death Race, of course, but they were putting out all these family movies instead, that Roger did later when he had his own home video label. And so Disney was just like, how are we're not making any money off of this deal? And it's like, well, yeah, because you're picking all the wrong movies. And so they sold the library back to Roger to get out of that business. And I saw that news, in the newspaper, online, or something like that.
Right.
And so I reached out to them. So that, I'm sorry, was the first film deal we did, was a Roger Corman deal. And fast forward, like maybe 10 years later, we bought half of the Roger
Eppler.
Corman library. So Shout Factory owns like 300 plus movies. Then we were doing the Roger Corman titles first, and uh, Jeff Nelson, who was the marketing person at Shout Factory, was working with me on all of the Roger Corman titles. When we were able to do the MGM deal and we were able to do the Universal deal, then we did a Fox deal because we were doing TV titles from them as well. And that was where, Terror Train came from. And so, Jeff and I, just said, we've got so much horror content that we can release. Maybe we should have a label. And so we went to the owners of Shout Factory and said, what do you think? I think it was Scream Factory was one name. Shriek Factory was was one,
Yeah.
and Scream one, and so that's how Scream Factory came to be.
So, Cliff, if I can kind of break this down,
Sure.
do you think that the relationship that Shout Factory had with Universal and the relationship they had with Universal was kind of like the bridge that made getting horror films easier?
Yeah, or any films, and when I joined Shout Factory, I think they'd put one movie out, which was like The Stewardesses or some crazy movie like that. And I was trying to tell them, we need to get into films. Like, it's just not TV content, and they were kind of skeptical about it. And but once we started acquiring this stuff and it started selling like crazy, then they realized that we
If I
needed to be in the movie releasing business.
I was gonna say, if I can, why do you think they were I guess my ignorance was I do remember my very first Shout Factory title I ever bought unknowingly, meaning I wasn't looking at the side label to see what company was in fact Spin City, like I'm a huge Michael J. Fox fan, and,
Mm.
um, yeah, I'm fascinated to learn because I just never paid that much attention that Shout Factory pre-2012 maybe-ish was just putting out television shows, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming that business model were they the company kind of just doing that? Were they exclusively I say not exclusively is the right word, but were they just the company that was only putting out box sets of television shows and things like that?
Well, there was a market for it at that time in the DVD business.
Right.
Um, they were filling a niche that people wanted, and we were selling tons. We had Mystery Science Theater too, and that was like printing money. Every volume just sold
Like,
crazy amount of units. So
do you know
it was a niche that, well, let me say, it was a niche that somebody needed to take
right.
and run with, and Shout Factory did. And at the time, the studios really didn't care that much about TV shows unless it was a major show. So that's basically what Shout did to you know blossom into the mega company that it is now.
When you talk about you and the other gentleman's name was Jeff that you
Jeff Nelson, yeah.
Jeff Nelson. You talk about having conversations with him saying, "You know what, dude? There's this great library from Universal, et cetera, with Halloween and things like this." Do you remember at the time? Because I can't, my memory's a little fuzzy on this. The idea of taking those movies and doing Blu-ray releases and DVDs, because I remember you guys. I have them. I have Halloween 2 on DVD when it came out from you guys. The idea of that at the time, as you say it out loud. back then talking to Jeff, did it sound like a pipe dream even for you on the being on the inside working on that side of things? Because on the outside as a fan hearing about it, I didn't believe it at first. Collector's editions of the Halloween film? I thought we were weird. I thought we were dorks that like these movies that are just under take like break down that can you kind of break down that conversation and how realistic it seemed just talking about it at the time?
Well, Jeff and I were huge horror fans, and so the opportunity of putting some of these movies that we loved out, was like pinch me. I can't believe that this is happening, because I never would have thought that it would happen in my career, that we'd have the ability to put out as many great films as we put out, or we put out over those years. From, I would say that was probably around 2010 to last year. We put out an amazing list of movies.
Remarkable.
Not everyone sold, not everyone was a hit, but um, to work on them, and then to work with the talent and the directors and so forth. Yeah, I mean, it was like an absolute dream come true for sure.
So when you guys go to release, like for instance, Halloween's 2 and 3, I have a couple questions about this. Can you kind of, if you know, maybe in the equivalency of like a band selling a record, did Halloween 2 and 3 go gold, platinum even? I mean, do you have any sales figures in terms of copies sold on that sort
Yeah,
of thing?
I can't even remember at this point. It was so long ago. But yeah, I mean, they were huge. And they got into retailers, um, Best Buy and places like that. I can't remember if Walmart took those back then. They might have. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing run, that first year or so, because it did include They Live and Phantasm 2, and as I said, Terror Train,
Right.
and it we were very lucky. We had a stacked release schedule to start out, and so Scream Factory kind of took off pretty darn quick.
It was a
Yeah.
golden era. I mean, I was talking to some of my friends about this. It was an absolute golden era. And it was banger after banger. I'll never forget, oh my god, Day of the I'm not 'cause you guys definitely were in Walmart. I'll never forget, it's right there. Day of the Dead, when you guys put that out, the collector's edition was at the store, and but I would love to for you to break this down if you can. You get the okay, "Okay, guys, we have the okay to do Halloweens 2 and 3. Here's your parameters. Here's what we want." Is that what happens, or do they give you carte blanche to say you can and like, with special features and things like that? I mean, it's clearly done by people like yourself that are fans of the movies and wanted the fans to be happy with the standalone documentary for Halloween 3, which was my jaw was on the floor watching it. I couldn't believe I was watching a documentary about this movie. Break that down for me. Who's in charge of creating that process?
It was combined with Jeff and I. Basically, yeah, we did have carte blanche. We had to get everything approved by the bosses, but our budgets for extra features and film transfers and all that was, we stayed within the parameters that we had to, and we did, you know, as great a job as we could for every film. Some, were easier to create, really great editions with documentaries and so forth. And, some titles, people are hard to find in some of these older movies, and don't want to talk or want to be paid a ridiculous amount of money to talk. And so it was it was a balancing act, trying to stay within budget on certain titles and not going over, and maybe using some of your budget from another title to spend a little bit more on a
Yeah.
bigger title. But yeah, I mean, we always had to report to the owners of the company and our bosses, and so even some of the smaller titles that you know we did a lot of extras on, it was like, oh boy, I hope I don't get in trouble for this.
Yeah.
Because you spent too much on a title that didn't sell at all. And so it was Jeff and me, and then it was also working with people like Michael Felsher, who did a lot of our documentaries and so forth. And they brought a lot to the table.
Yeah.
uh, you know, uh, and really, found everybody they possibly could. And so, it was a very collaborative thing. There were also other people within Shout Factory who were fans that would help out, and the people that did all of our packaging and stuff there were very talented. And uh, yeah.
If I could, one of the things that really had a lot of us excited during that time was, when the announcements came for a lot of these titles, They Live and the Halloweens, of course, and Prince of Darkness, things like that. You guys were getting artists to create this just gorgeous artwork. I mean, was that your brainchild? Was that the studio saying, "Hey, let's spice this up"? Where does the idea for the new artwork for the releases come from?
That
And
came basically from Jeff, because Jeff was the marketing person, and he was very passionate about different artists and so forth. I brought some artists to the table too, and so did our art people, but most of it was from Jeff, because I mean, he really uh, is a super big fan, and he had ideas of what should be on the cover, and so forth. So it
if
was pretty collaborative.
if I can ask, it's kind of a nerdy question, but I think I have my finger on the pulse of a little bit of the things people always wonder about with this sort of thing. When it comes to a lot of those releases too, uh, having the original poster art on the releases was people were as if not more excited about that sort of thing, because we saw in the past, they would put clip art. I mean, there's a Scarface Halloween 2 DVD, just ridiculous stuff. Is that a whole nother license in and of itself to be able to get that for the on the slipcovers, the original artwork?
No, the original artwork is usually cleared for home video. So, yeah, I mean, the funny thing at all the studios over the years, as you've seen their packaging change under different people that are running the marketing department at studios, but yeah, I mean, some of the awful covers they've made over the years, and it was just the marketing department, keeping themselves busy, so they would change, the artwork on titles, just to have something to do, I think, and so they shied away from the front, poster artwork. But it was important to Jeff and I that had to be on the reverse if we did new art, because
Yeah.
some people just like the poster and want the poster to be the cover.
So, yeah. So during that first year, like you were saying, I mean, that must have had to have been like a creative high for you to be able to put out. I mean, literally, it was banger after banger, Deadly Blessing, Prince of Darkness, They Live, all that stuff. I mean, do you remember one title that you were just so proud of by the time it was done? I mean, there's a lot to be proud of for sure because of how highly regarded that era of Scream Factory was. Is there a title that you look back on that you say to yourself, I can hang my hat on that release? That was good. For me, it was the Prince of Darkness, because when you got Alice Cooper on there, that's my hero. I mean, I got him tatted on me. I mean, my favorite musician of all time. And when you got the interview with him for that release, I was like, this is my favorite company in the world. I can't believe that they're not only giving this kind of love to these titles, but I mean, they're covering all the bases on these. I mean, Do you have any memories during that time that you're like before the Halloween box set? Because I, of course, want to talk about that. But you're just like, I can't believe we got this. This is incredible.
Um, I think Halloween 2 only because I think some of us older people like me grew up watching Halloween 2 on TV and watching that awful version where
Which
he
you
says,
included on the release.
yeah, which he says sugar instead of shit, and it's like I really wanted to put that version on the disc, and I was talking to Universal, and they said, no, we don't have anything marked, TV Master,
You're like,
that
let me
kind of,
come look. It's there.
yeah, that kind of stuff, they would throw away because they didn't use those masters anymore. And they said, we have this master that says AMC on it, but it's probably just the cut version of the movie without the dialogue that you're looking for. And I said, will you just make me a copy of it and send it over? Sure. So they send it over, and sure enough, it was the TV Master. So it was basically just mislabeled. It wasn't an AMZ version. It
Yeah.
was the network broadcast version of Halloween 2. So I was happy that we were able to get that on there.
Yeah. That was cool. I know a lot of fans love that. So I think the Halloween box set had come out in 2014. And so you had been at this company for, you said 2010-ish is when you joined Shout Factory?
2009. So yeah, I've been
2009.
there for 5 years.
Who's the first person to say, is it you or Jeff, that was like, what if? Do you remember?
Well, I would say it's both of us. I mean, we were both, huge Halloween fans, and we had 2 and 3, and I can't remember exactly how it first started, whether we approached him or he approached us. There was a guy at Anchor Bay who was a huge horror fan. Oh my God, his name's escaping me. I'm so bad with names these days. But he, I think he came to us and said, what do you think? And at that time, Anchor Bay had 1, 4, and 5. So at the time, we thought, well, at least we could do a 1 through 5 box set in conjunction with Anchor Bay. And I actually, from my Tower Records days, knew a woman that was working at Miramax. And so I contacted her and said, what if, could we possibly get these movies? And at that time, they were stuck over at Echo Bridge, and there were all these awful Halloween,
I have them. Those little
yeah,
multi-pack craps with
yeah,
Hellraisers and
yeah, 3 movies crammed on one Blu-ray. So she said, well, I think I can get this pushed through. And so I'm like, wow. So now it looks like we're Halloween, 1 through 8. And then our distributor, our Shout Factory distributor at the time, was a company called Cinedigm. And Cinedigm had a part of the Weinstein Library. So I said, hey, could we, release the 2 Rob Zombie titles too? And they said, well, we're not going to let you, make a new disc or whatever. So if you want to buy, the discs that we put out, you can buy those discs. So it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So, it was what? 5 licensors: Anchor Bay, us, Miramax. No, so it was 4.
Trancas. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Cliff,
So
really quick, can I just, because I'm
yeah,
trying to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. You technically didn't license the Rob Zombie films. You guys bought a shit ton of discs. Is that what you're
we
telling
just
me?
bought discs. Mhm.
Oh my God. Like I never would have guessed it. I mean, it makes sense because they're the discs from the previous release, the unrated, the director's cut discs. So you literally, I mean, when you go to where you go to your upper echelon and say, this is what the parent company that owns the Rob Zombie film says, we can just buy a ton of discs. I mean, that's okay. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I'm just making sure I
No, no,
understood that
no. I
because
mean,
that is so funny to me.
well, I can tell you when I would ever, this happened multiple times. Whenever I went to the company and said, "Hey, can we buy a bunch of discs from such and such?" They're like, "I don't want to do that because you can't return them." All we bought were discs on spindles. So it's a long spindle and then it's just full of discs. So that's how we get it. And we
Yeah.
have to pay for it in advance. So that money's like gone.
Right.
So if this hadn't worked, we would have had all this inventory on spindle and you couldn't do anything with it.
But
So
you
it's
knew,
very,
you knew
yeah,
it was going to work.
it's very risky to, buy discs. We never wanted to do that.
And one
um
more thing, Cliff. I'm so sorry. Before I
yeah,
forget this, I'm so
yeah.
sorry. Believe me, I know audience is all about this. Did you have any notion in your mind or in Jeff's mind? And I know this may sound a little silly, but you know how Halloween fans are, especially with Rob Zombie. I don't know what your personal feelings are about the movies, and I'm sure as a business guy, you could care less. But was there ever a moment where either one of you said, "Do we want to put the Rob Zombie ones in here?"
I would have no.
You see where I'm coming
If,
from, though. You
no,
know.
I totally see where you're coming from, and if it was a year ago and we had done the box set, and you had asked me if I had to put the three new titles in the box, I wouldn't have wanted to put those in the box. But I mean, the Rob Zombies were fine with me. Yeah.
Me too. But it's you know you
Oh
know
yeah.
how they're
No. I mean,
rabid. Rob
yeah,
Zombie needs to be burned at the stake. He's a son of a bitch. You know.
yeah. But there's always people that like.
Sure,
There's people that say,
sure.
"Why did you put Resurrection in the box set? It's a piece of
Because
shit."
it's a fucking
Well,
Halloween film.
exactly. So that's what you do
Like you
when you
can't be
when
in
you
you obviously are not fit for this kind of business if that's the mindset you have. It's
yeah.
silly. Anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
that's
Go ahead.
I mean, a friend of mine and I were always big where you had to have all the movies. And so
Sure.
I remember one year for my birthday he bought me Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And I hated that movie when it came out. But you had to have it, and
Absolutely.
lined up with the rest of your Nightmare on Elm Street titles. Um, so no, I there was never any question that we wanted those two to be in the box set.
So what's the vision when this starts to become reality? Who's the one that says, "Well, of course, this has to be individual cases. We've got to try to interview all these people." Do you have go-to people at this point that you're saying, "Okay, we're going to get this person to work on this. We're going to get this." Cuz you guys had pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, but during this time, Horror's Hallowed Grounds was typically on most of these releases. Felsher was working with you. Peter Brackey, I believe, was a guy that was heavily involved
Yeah,
with you guys
he
too.
helped. Yeah, I mean, you would try and find the people that know the properties really well. So Michael Felsher was involved, Sean Clark was involved, Peter was involved. You just try and bring in the best of the best. To have a team of people that are working on it, and I think we had multiple people working on it because I was just too worried that if you gave the project to one person, that they would have a hard time doing all the work. So um, I think we had a couple of people working on extra features for that because it was just so big. And yeah.
Let me ask you this, Cliff. Do you have any conversations from your higher ups at the time? I'm taking the Halloween fandom out of it. I'm Shout Factory. Well, Cliff, listen, it sounds like a fun idea, but we already put out 2 and 3. Why would people want to buy something again where we already put those movies out? Or on the other end, do you ever have a conversations like, okay, we'll do this, but if this flops, I mean, do these
Yeah.
conversations happen? Because I can imagine they would have.
I, people were worried because it was such a big set. It was also a set that we were doing with another company that we had never worked with before. Um, Anchor Bay actually manufactured the set, so we had no ability to. I think actually we did all the art. They printed it. They pressed the discs. So it was weird because we had never, and nobody had ever really created something this big with multiple licensors.
No.
Uh, and at one point during the beginning of this, Walmart was interested. And so we made that version that you talked about where it didn't have the producer's cut. It was just the first disc for every movie, and it
Right.
actually sold really well in Walmart. But yeah, everybody was a very worried about how it would sell, and then of course it sold like gangbusters.
It's incredible.
Everybody made money on it. Uh, so later when the Friday the 13th one came up, nobody was concerned at all because we had the experience of doing the Halloween set, and it worked out.
Now, Cliff, when this thing comes out, you have to just have the highest confidence. They have to love you at the company, right? I mean, when this thing was such a success, I'm assuming, they were like, "All right, Cliff, we're not gonna question you. You can what movie do you wanna put out? You got it." I mean, were you riding a high when this thing comes out after the first 4 or 5
Eh,
months?
I wouldn't say that. I was always very lucky there that they, appreciated what I did for the company and all the movies and I would kind of say my entire time there was kind of on a high. I mean, Jeff and I were rarely questioned because we knew what we were doing and we were, making the company a lot of money.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that definitely was a high because it did sell a lot. But when you create a big box set like that, there's issues always, when it gets shipped and it gets banged up and somebody wants a new box. And
Right.
so, something like that creates headaches. And then, the huge thing that happened uh, to address the elephant in the room, Halloween 4 had an audio issue.
Mhm.
And, everybody sort of attacked us when that happened. And now that they're not around anymore, I can say that it was Anchor Bay's fault. It was their disc. You may remember everybody had always talked about the fact that number 4 had a brief sequence that was not in sync.
Right.
And that scene was not in sync, not because of an error, but it was done during ADR when they re-looped the dialogue. It didn't match the lips very well. So when we were having our early meetings with Anchor Bay, I said, you guys have to fix that. We can't put a new disc in the box set with that sequence out of sync. So somebody at Anchor Bay decided the way to fix the issue was to move the whole film up 3 frames. So by doing that, he put the entire film out of sync.
Oh, wow. And fix the one
except,
scene.
except for the one scene.
That's not how you fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So, everybody came down on us and there was people, bitching about Scream Factory fucked this up. And it had nothing to do with us. It wasn't even our disc. It was, Halloween 4. So it comes out, this is noticed, and us at Scream Factory, I mean, we knew how to fix it. You just fix that one sequence, to be in sync. You don't move the entire movie 3 frames forward. And so, we on our dime spent the money to fix the error and made discs and shipped them to the fans because, we didn't want the fans to be pissed off at the release. So, yeah, I mean, we fixed a problem that we didn't create. But, everybody was appreciative of it. And they finally got Halloween 4 in sync, for a change.
Now, Cliff, let me ask you this, though. Why don't you I say why don't you? I mean, I'm really just trying to find out your mindset during this time and what was going on. Why don't you come out and say something? Or you said, "Hey, Cliff, don't like I don't know if you're the type of guy to want to go on Twitter or something and say, "Guys, listen. This is what's going on," because you just mentioned that Anchor Bay's not around. I'm assuming there's a level of professionalism you have to keep, and fans don't understand this. You can't go on the internet and just start throwing blame. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we weren't going to throw Anchor Bay under the bus. I can now because they're not around. But, yeah, I mean, I couldn't go online and say that. It was, yeah, who knows what we would have done with Anchor Bay next.
Right.
You don't want to burn the bridge, now that you're working with, a pretty big label.
Right. So, Cliff, there's so many titles I could talk to you about. Obviously, I can't ask you about every single one, but like you said, you guys were. When I think back to Scream Factory, like from 2013 when you guys launched, 2012, I think 2012 or 13 when Halloween 2 and 3 came out, to I don't know 2017, like basically the big Blu-ray run was since I mean the whole 3 top rows of my collection,
I
incredible.
know,
I'm
I
looking
see.
at Critters, Firestarter, Night of the Creeps was huge. Psycho 2 and 3, that was gigantic. Pumpkinhead, you name it. Slither. You guys were putting out some great titles. During 2015, 2016, I'll never forget the company Arrow Video started coming into America. From my perspective, now I don't know how. I obviously they are a juggernaut overseas, but when they started creeping into America, and I remember one of the big releases that they had was House. Are you kind of put on notice, saying, "Wait a minute, this is kind of our territory," and Arrow Video is kind of creeping in? Do you have that mindset at the time?
Well, I think you always see your competitors as competitors. Um, at that time, I didn't know the Arrow people. I work at Arrow now, so it's funny to be working with them now. But no, I don't think so. I think the only thing, well, I don't even want to get into that, but yeah, I mean, sometimes when you're for a long time, we were kind of the
The
company.
juggernaut, yeah.
Yeah. So when you see somebody else get something, you go, oh man, I would have liked to have that. But, you know, as I got older, it was like, you know what? We're all in this business. One company can't do everything. So, there is always going to be competition. And working for a company like Shout Factory, which is much bigger than all of our competitors, and we have a lot of people, we've got 50, 60, 70, it grew over the years. We can't put out certain titles that don't hit a threshold of, you know, making money back for the company. So even though there were titles that I would have liked to have had over the years, a lot of times they're just small titles. And, what a smaller company can do, um, with a small title, they don't have as much overhead, so they can take a chance with titles that at Chat Factory we couldn't,
Right.
and there were titles that we passed on and other people put out and did really well with them. And, you want to kick yourself, but you got to do what's best for the company and to not lose money for the company. So, I mean, House, would I like to have had? Yeah, it would have been cool, but they did such an amazing job that, you know, I'm glad, that somebody who really had a passion for the title put it up.
So I'd be remiss not to ask you about this, because I know all my viewers are going to want me to ask about this. I don't know what you can and can't talk about. I'll just put it out there. One of the biggest mysteries for Scream Factory fans, and I'm sure you know what movies I'm talking about, are the Sleepaway Camp sequels. What can you tell me about the logistics of licensing those movies? Because a lot of people feel like as soon as they arrived, they were gone. Now, I know that's not really the case, but I think it feels like that. And another big mystery is Pamela Springsteen refusing to acknowledge these movies' existences. What can you tell me? Can you shed any light on these two movies for me?
Yeah, there was an MGM deal that we did that had those movies in it, and things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and they came up for renewal, and our sales department at the time made a mistake, and we didn't renew them, and it just made Vinegar Syndrome a lot of money that we didn't renew Texas Chainsaw 2 or Roadhouse or those Mad Max. I can't believe that our sales department let us lose Mad Max. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Oh, Cliff, really quick. So let me ask you this in regards to what you just said, because I want to be able to really paint this picture for my audience. You guys get right of refusal before any other so it's not a bidding war. It's not Vinegar Syndrome going to MGM behind your back and slipping them wads of cash to license the titles. Because, Cliff, I really want you to understand how a lot of us truly don't understand the way this business works, and we're ignorant. And some people talk out of their ass, and I don't think they mean to, but they just don't understand.
Absolutely. Yes, we see that a lot online. We had a 4 or 5 year deal. It's probably 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, the studio will say, do you want to renew the titles and keep them, or do you want to, let them go? And there was, I think, 2 MGM deals that we let go that included those titles, and it was a major fuck up. Right. And we should have never let those titles lapse. But going back to your original question on the sleepaway camps, those we did let go because they didn't sell very well. I mean, the first movie is, classic and did really well. But the 2 sequels, which we licensed from MGM, didn't perform very well. And so that's why we let them go. That's why they went out of print. I don't remember if we ever reached out to Pamela. I think Michael Felsher worked on those. I'm sure he would have tried. You get that a lot is, why didn't you contact this person? Why didn't you contact that person? Why is there not an interview with that person? It's like we reach out to everybody, and some people just don't want to talk about movies. And, whether they had a bad experience on the set or whatever, or they're just not in the business anymore. There's many reasons why we don't get certain people, but I don't know what her problem with those 2 movies are.
You bring that up, and I think it is important for you to be able to talk about this to the fans of physical media and Scream Factory and things like that. Do you feel like sometimes you have to just eat crow when you go online and you see the things people say and a armchair quarterback, so to speak? Because I feel like as I've been doing my YouTube channel for a while and being able to talk to gentlemen like you about this sort of thing, you realize it's a business, and that it's so easy for me to say, or for somebody to say, well, I don't understand why Rob Zombie's not on the Halloween box set. Well, like you just said, you guys couldn't press new discs. You couldn't just put a new interview on those discs. You couldn't license it. You didn't license the films. You bought thousands of
Yeah.
discs. So, I mean, was that something you had to just learn how to get thick skin about, or just realize everybody's a goddamn critic? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the reality
Yeah.
you were living in. And of course, you had
It's
thousands of fans that were being happy, but it's the
yeah.
negative ones you probably remember the most.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that are the loudest. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you ever get a thick enough skin unless you just completely stay off the internet, which, is hard to do. Um, you know, yeah, it's tough because you work really hard and you do everything that you can for a title, and then somebody can easily, slam you in a few seconds.
It's
And it's like when I first started in the business, in 2000, I was at Ventura. You'd put out a title, and the first review would be in a magazine, and magazines had a 2-month lead time, so there was never a review when the thing came out on the street. So nowadays people are bashing a title before it even gets out. So
yeah, it's
uh
ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, it's tough. Jeff and I dealt with this the entire time, and it was like, you have to remember all the people that love what you do
Absolutely.
and not get hung up on the 10% or 5% that don't. You're just never going to win get them on your side, and you just have to do what you do and try and ignore it.
Were you eager to well, before we get to talking a little bit about 4K, if I can, I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate the time you've given
No,
me.
it's fine. Yeah.
um so the Friday the 13th box set, you did mention, what I like to do is I like to try to present this to you from the fan side, and you can kind of fill in the pieces on this. You did
Sure.
mention that there was less hesitancy on Scream Factory's part because of the arousing success. Again, Cliff, if you can't talk about certain things, I totally understand. I mean, because of what you do, I don't know if you can see what's against the back wall in my room. There, you had to have said to Jeff, had discussions, we've got to put out A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I feel like I've heard people talk about somebody from Scream Factory, maybe not you, say this. Not MGM, excuse me, Warner Brothers, New Line, whatever, because I think one owns the other at this point. They are not licensing it. They're saying they're going to do this in-house. Can you confirm that? Can you deny that? Can you tell me what can you tell the fans?
Well, through my career, I have heard this phrase many times, and it has haunted me forever. And it's active franchise. So every time I would ask for a title, I think I probably spent at least 7 years asking Universal for the Chucky movies. And they said, no, it's an active franchise. We're making a TV show. We're making new movies. We won't license an active franchise. So, I spent years trying to, convince the people at Universal, look, you've got a Chucky box set that's like $20 on Amazon. I'm going to put all 4 of them out at like $29.99 each. So I'm not stealing your customer. My customer is somebody that already has that 1995 Blu-ray box set, but they want a version with extras because Child's Play 2, 3, and the rest of the sequels really didn't have any extra features ever. Well, 2 and 3 never had any extra features. So I said, I'm selling to a different consumer than you are. So finally, they caved in and gave those to us. Friday the 13th always was No, it's an active franchise.
During
And
a freaking lawsuit.
then we ran into, no, it's in a lawsuit, so we can't license those movies. And that made sense, of course. And then when we did the Friday the 13th box set, there was a lawsuit. The lawsuit was really on at that point. So that is why in that box set, Freddy versus Jason and the 2009 film are finished discs. Warner could not license us those movies during the lawsuit. So that's why those are two finished discs. And that's why on the bonus disc, there's some extra features for both of them. Because we couldn't redo the disc. So
again, same thing as Rob Zombie's films. They're not licensed. You bought a ton of that.
Yeah.
Cliff, not in a million years would I have guessed, because that's what you guys would have done. I'm so fascinated by that, and I'm glad that I'm a big fan of the 2009 Jason film too. So like, I'm so glad that you say to yourself, well, we have to do that, as opposed to, we can't license it. No, we still got to put those in there. I'm so glad that you guys do that.
Yeah, and we had a relationship with Warner Brothers. We had done, I think, one or maybe two deals. No, I think only one deal with them at the time of the box set. So they were happy to sell us discs. I mean, it's a sale to them. So they have no problem with that. So yes, back to Nightmare on Elm Street. I've worked with Warner Brothers now for 4 or 5 years or whatever. I ask every time we did a deal. That was at the top of my list, was Nightmare on Elm Street. But there was a lawsuit regarding that film too, so that's kept it away. I think they are now considering doing it themselves. So yeah, it's not available.
How many messages? And okay, so I'm glad to hear that. Let me ask you this, and you can just say yes or no. I heard rumors about this, and I just want to put it out there again. If you can't talk about it, totally understand. I heard some little birdies told me that there was actually a point where Scream Factory, I say you guys, you're not with them no more, but Scream Factory was going to do it, and maybe a few months into it, it got pulled. Is that BS?
That's complete BS. Yeah.
Okay.
We've never had any of the movies except for Freddy versus Jason. That was it.
Okay. So with the Friday the 13th box set, do you know if that sold as well as Halloween's?
I think it sold more. Yeah.
Does that surprise you?
Still sells for Chat Factory. They had,
and that's, I thought that would have been gone, and it's still, they must be, because it's still selling. They're still keeping it in print.
Yeah, before I left, the license had to be renewed, so I'm pretty sure it's still available. Yeah, still in print.
Mm-hmm. And how hands-on were you with the design of the set and things like that, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think Jeff and I from the beginning wanted Devin to do the artwork for it, and he did an amazing job.
Literally a 10 out of 10 artwork.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything Devin's did for us at Scream Factory was just awesome. I wish we could have used him on more. But you try and use different artists so everything doesn't kind of look the same. But
you got a guy that good,
Yeah, sometimes we'd use the same person a lot, but just because they did such great work, it's hard to.
Was there any thought to, or was there any thought to putting a new artwork on the actual slip covers for the movies for the Friday the 13th and things like that, or do you not really have?
No, I mean, that would have been awesome, but the art budget would have been, huge. So, yeah, that never came up. Plus, we love the original posters.
Oh, incredible! Yeah.
Of course, Final Chapter really never had a very good poster. It was just all text. So I think we took the newspaper ad for that shows the kid with the silhouette of the machete, and we colored it because the original cover for New Beginning is just text. That's it. That's all that's on it. There's no picture, no nothing.
Did you get a notion of a lot of fans wondering? I think, and I totally get going with the posters for the film. Did you get a lot of messages from fans asking why you guys didn't put the VHS cover art on for 5?
Yeah, there was some of that. I think it's on the back. I think you can reverse it, and
Well,
it's
the front side is "If Jason Still Haunts You, You're Not Alone," and then the reverse is, in fact, what you're talking about, the newspaper with Tommy holding the machete.
okay.
You do have the hockey mask on the spine, but
It's on the spine. Yeah.
if I can, I'm assuming your thought processes at that time would be well, that would be one movie that would have the VHS artwork as opposed to the rest of them, despite the fact that is one of the only ones that is different. But still, was that the idea? Just hey, we got to keep this
I,
symmetrical or sort of thing.
yeah, I think that probably was part of it. Some would say, well, the cover that you have for Friday the 13th Part 2 with Shadow with the axe was from the video cover, but it was also uh, what they called an insert poster in movie theaters. It was a long, thin poster.
Day
That
Bill.
was that was the artwork
Okay,
for that insert. So it wasn't VHS artwork; it was actually a
right.
poster. So,
I want to
but
compliment
yeah,
you. Yeah. I want to
I
compliment you on
think
that box set. That's my favorite release you guys ever. I mean, I love the Halloween one too, but I'm Friday the 13th. It's Nightmare and Friday that are my favorites, then Halloween, and I can't tell you how much I love the Jason X documentary that was put on there with I'm such a Sean Cunningham fan, and I think you guys really delivered on that. There were some issues though when it came out with I mean, again, is that something you can't really talk about in terms of who messed up what?
I can. It's you know
I'm not looking to throw anybody
when
under the bus, but these things
no, no,
happen, and you
no.
kind of
No, I think, Chat Factory, we often had a very robust release schedule. And, we did have some people that did QC, and sometimes people miss things. And, in a month where you do a box set as big as that, you probably shouldn't have any other releases that month because that's a lot of discs that had to be QC'd,
yeah,
and we really didn't have a very good system for QC work, and it kind of changed after that box set, and our we put in place a QC company, and they checked every release. And pretty much after that box set, I think we didn't have another problem because it was cheaper to hire somebody to do the QC work, of course, than it is to mail out a bunch of discs. So, yeah, that release luckily put into play a QC system, which remains today.
right.
And we really didn't have any. I think we had one more title, like Earthquake, that had a replacement program, but that was pretty much the last one.
Yeah.
So it takes a nightmare situation, no pun intended, to get the situation fixed. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I get it. Those things happen, and of course, you're one guy, so it's not like anything that happened was on you or your fault. But again, I'm sure you put, I don't know how many hours into working, phone calls, meeting this person, talking to that person to do it, and it's just like, yeah, you'll see the negative. But you got to remember, like you said, I mean, that box set. I'm not surprised it outsold Halloween. Do you feel, Cliff, that that horror has? Let's just take it from the release of this box set. Do you feel that horror has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger since then, and the fans are just multiplying for especially these big franchises since then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to sound like an old guy, but there is a like new people that are coming along and discovering horror and horror fandom and conventions and so forth. So yeah, there's a whole new audience, and then there are people that have been fans, since the '80s, like I have been.
Yeah.
Um, but it's great that there's new people that are really um, coming along and embracing the genre and really are into collecting. And the craziest thing I think I've seen is people collecting VHS tapes, because I don't get why you'd want to watch something in the worst possible way.
I'm
Um,
convinced they're lying to themselves, Cliff.
yeah, I mean, at least collect beta. They look at least
They
better
look
than
a little bit better.
VHS, or collect laser discs. Why are you collecting VHS?
Yeah.
So that's funny, because I threw all my VHSs away, and if I knew I was going to, be
Start
rich
your own.
by selling them,
Yeah.
I would have held on to them.
Cliff, were you a front runner when
Oop, you froze.
if I can? I'm sorry, I think I might have glitched for a second.
Yeah,
I
you
have
froze.
okay, I do have one more question about the box set that I think a lot of fans would like
Yep.
to know about. The first 4 films were remastered in 4K or restored from the negatives. Who decides to stop at 4? Who decides to just do remasters in the beginning? Again, I'm just trying to get answers that the fans are
Sure.
always asking.
Well, you know, we license physical home video rights, and the studio owns the movie, and they have television, and they have streaming, and they have other revenue streams to recoup their costs from doing a new master. We don't. So
Right.
what we spend on a title, we have to recoup from the physical release. So, that's why it's easier for a studio to think, well, if I remaster this title, I can sell it to streaming, I can sell it to Tubi, I'm going to make all this money in different revenue streams. And we had one, the physical release. To try and keep the project under a certain budget, we did stop at those. We also figured they were newer films, and remastering them probably wouldn't have improved them all that much, because they were so new. Whereas the older films would definitely, uh, you know, uh, do better in a brand new transfer. Yeah, would I have liked to have done them all? Yeah, but you have a budget you have to stay within, and so you have to make sacrifices on some front, and unfortunately, those were the ones that that we didn't redo.
Yeah. It totally makes sense, and again, I just think people assume, oh, they don't realize, like you said, budget. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I think people think maybe when Scream Factory does something like this, they say, well, people will only care about seeing the first 4 movies in 4K or something like that. Well, it's like it's I
No,
get it.
I mean, yeah, we're fans of those as well, so it did hurt to not be able to do them. But with that many films and that many, masters, and depending on the age of the movie, you could be looking at $20,000-$30,000 to do the work, and then you times that by how many movies are in the set, and it's like it's very expensive. And that's why you see the studios don't do it, because it's expensive, and they have other revenues to collect money from, and we don't. So yeah.
Did it surprise you to see Paramount release the movie? I mean, are those the remasters that were done with the Scream Factory box set? Is that the same basically master that Paramount is using for?
Yeah.
Did that surprise you to see them do that, or does that just seem?
No, when you go into this, the main reason a studio will license something to you is, they're getting a new master out of it. So
Now we're
that's
yeah.
that's why they license it. I did understand because I didn't buy it, but the 4K of Friday the 13th, that's not our master. They did a new master for that 4K release, so that's why evidently I guess the colors are different than our
It's
release.
it's very dark. And see, by you what you just said, I don't even know if you realize you just answered one of the biggest mysteries that but by you saying that it was done separately from Paramount, people were wondering what the hell happened. And they're like,
Yeah,
well, they're just used. I think again, people assume, and I understand it. Well, Paramount's not gonna do a new master. They're gonna use a Scream Factory one and just do it as a HDR 4K. But the fact that it
yeah.
was different, that explains a lot.
I think we did it in 2K, and so that's why when they decided they were going to do a 4K release, they had to go back and remaster it because ours was a 2K. They could have upscaled it, but they did the right thing and they retransferred it.
A lot of fans were wondering, okay, I'm gonna get the 10 disc. I say 10 disc, the 10 disc equivalent version for Friday the 13th. Like this, was this a conversation to have a Friday the 13th version of this ever?
No, our deal with Paramount was to do a collector's edition.
Oh, and they basically
So,
did their own. Well,
yeah,
Paramount did with 1 through 8.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that's also like, our original plan was a 4K Halloween box set.
Oh,
And
let's get into it.
we couldn't get the only way we could get the rights to the Miramax 3 for the 4K set was by doing a box set. And so even when I went to Paramount and said, look, we can't get the rest of the films, can we do these as single 4K? They said, no, the contract says it's got to be in a box set. And so people thought us doing a box set of those three was to make people buy Resurrection. That's not the truth. That was in our contract that it had to be a box set. So that's why we still did them in the rigid cases, and we put them in an outer box because that's what our contract said we had to do.
Did you guys get enough? And again, you know how the fans of Halloween's can be, but I do recall. I can't remember if it was a formal statement or not, but I just
We
remember hearing. Did you guys get enough? Let's just call it what it is. Enough bullshit that you guys finally had to say, okay, we got to say something because of these people will not
No,
stop.
we announced it when we announced them because we knew people were going to say we're just price gouging, we're just trying to make everybody buy all three, even if they only want, H2O. No, it strictly was wording in our contract, and yeah, we had to do it as a box set. That's what the contract said, so that's what we had to do, unfortunately.
And Cliff, again, if you can't talk about this, I understand. I think another thing people are wondering last year, people were saying, oh, well, this is going to be the year Rob Zombie's 2 films are coming out. And we're going to see these 16 millimeter films in 4K. This is going to be the year. Last year, people were saying it never happened. What can you shed any light on that?
They currently reside with Lionsgate, and Lionsgate would never do a deal with Shout Factory. So, yeah, no, we had no ability to get them. We tried, but they were off limits to us. So that's why the big box set fell apart.
Can do you know? Do you have any insight on? There's a rumor going around that Rob Zombie doesn't like high definition. He's been on interviews saying he prefers people to buy Devil's Rejects on DVD as opposed to Blu-ray because it looks too clean. Can you shed any light on if there was a rumor or if there's any truth to the fact that Rob Zombie doesn't want his movies to be on a 4K release, which I hear semi-frequently. I don't know if you can shed any light on that.
I don't think so. I had a long conversation with him. When we did Munsters Go Home, I knew that Rob was a big Munsters fan, so we reached out to him to see if he'd be interested in doing an audio commentary, and he did. He came in and he did the audio commentary with Butch Patrick, and afterwards, Rob stood around and talked to us for like an hour and a half, or whatever, and I wish I had known that. I would have asked, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses in 4K is still going to look, very filmic, as long as you don't use a lot of digital noise reduction to try and minimize the grain.
James Cameron.
Yeah, which is something we would never do. And we were constantly being called out for revisionist, and it's not true.
Yeah.
We never messed with a movie. Sometimes you have to apply a very minor amount when things get excessively grainy, because when you compress the file for a disc, it causes sometimes noise that you see in the picture. So sometimes you have to use a very light amount, which is the worst we ever did, just to stop that micro blocking, from being very distracting, which it can be.
Sure.
When it's really, really grainy. But yeah, no, I mean, I think those Cameron movies look pretty good on disc. Do they look a little fake? Yeah. But it's his movie. He can do what he wants with it.
That's true.
That's like when people were attacking us when we did Dog Soldiers, and Neil Marshall was there the entire time. He sat through the entire color correction. He approved it, sat there, and then people were attacking him. And he had to go on the internet and go, come on, it's my fucking movie.
Yeah, give me a break.
If I want it to look like that, I can make it look like that. It's none of your fucking business.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous that people would even question a director on the way, he made something look. And
I like the 4K of Dog Soldiers. I was really happy when that came out on 4K.
Well, that looks a lot better than our Blu-ray did. Unfortunately, at the time when we did our Blu-ray, the negative was no one was sure where it was.
Yeah.
So we used some prints. So that's why it was so grainy, because that's what a print looks like. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people nowadays that buy discs that don't know what a 35 millimeter film looks like when it's projected in a theater. It's grainy. It looks very film-like. And, some people want their movies to look like James Cameron, and that's just not way older films look,
Yeah. So, Cliff, you are now with Arrow Video, and I'd love to kind of cap off. First off, again, I really appreciate your honesty and giving me your time, and I know my audience, this has been so enlightening, not only for me, but for my audience, because, it's not every day we get the ability to talk to somebody in your position. How does Arrow steal you away? How does the tenure with Scream Factory come to an end?
Yeah, let's just say it was time for me to go. I mean, I think I had done everything that I could do there, and it was an amazing 14 years, and the owners of the company were very good to me over the years, but it was just time to do something else. And at Shout Factory, I was doing the acquisitions, and I was doing the film transfer work, or approving it. And I was also doing all the extras, and I was doing 5 or 6 titles a month. And it was just too much. I couldn't do all of that anymore. It was just
so stressful.
It was like, and since I left, there's like 3 people doing my job. So it shows, that it wasn't a job for one person. And so now at Arrow, I'm just I'm doing acquisitions, and I am starting to dabble a little into production, so I may start doing some titles again. But yeah, I just couldn't, handle 5 titles anymore, and it was just way too much.
Cliff, if I may, one of the things a lot of Scream Factory fans would say, and I don't know if you can say this was true or not, but did the company of Scream Factory start to let me give you an example of what I'm going to ask. In the I say the golden era, which is basically your tenure there. A lot of these releases, especially in the first, I'd say 5 or 6 years, you guys put these incredible, and I mean it, incredible documentaries. I watched the documentary for Army of Darkness that you guys did more than the actual film because the documentary is so entertaining. It's so well edited. It's great. I feel like a lot of the titles during the golden era had these beautiful documentaries, these bodies of work that you guys created the story with and put on there. And I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it kind of started going away and that it just started becoming bullet point interview, separating this, separating that. Now, the rumor that I would hear was that Scream Factory as a company started caring more about just having a big box full of special features as opposed to doing something like creating this documentary body of work, compiling things together and making a story out of something. Can you shed any light on if that was the case or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you see all the single interviews, it does, present like something that, looks like it's got a lot of breadth of extras on it. It was somewhat that, but the real issue is that when you make a documentary and you use clips and you use music and you use talent, technically, if it's over 20 minutes in length, it becomes a union issue where we would have to pay the unions, whether it would be the Screen Actors Guild
Mm-hmm.
or whether we would have to, pay the DGA. So a lot of the studios asked us to stop doing it because it was technically starting to become a feature, and the studio rule is that anything it has to be 20 to 30 minutes, no longer than that, because the guilds come looking for payment. So it really started from there. And many of the studios telling us, they approve all our extras. And they would say, look, you got to cut this into pieces. And so I think you'll notice on some of the great work that Michael Felsher did, we we broke them up, and they were in 3 pieces. So they would have a name like a documentary, but then it would be in 4 parts because the 4 parts could be like 20 to 30 minutes. So that's the way we got around the union rule, was to, break them up. And I think you'll notice that on every studio title. Nobody has anything that's longer than 20 or 30 minutes
Right.
because they don't want to pay the guilds. And that's also the other reason people would say things like, well, why does your extra features? I mean, you don't have any clips of their other movies, and it's because we can't. We
You got
would
to pay
have
for it.
to we would have to pay a clip license to put. So that's why within a Warner Brothers title, we can use Warner clips, but we can't use an MGM clip, or we can't use a Sony clip.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's there's a lot of rules that
That we
you
don't
know
realize.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like you want clips, you got to pay for it, pal.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've literally had studios tell us to take movie posters out of extra features because if it's a movie poster from another studio, well, technically you have to license that image.
Blur it out. Yeah.
And we we don't have the time or the manpower to, you know, license every clip or every picture or yeah. So that's why also, people have said it over the years, why the menus never have any of the songs from the movie.
Gotta
Like,
pay for it, pal.
you got to pay for it. It's another use.
That's incredible.
If it's not within the movie and you're using it as a menu, you got to pay.
Cliff, this is, and again, before we wrap up, you're with Arrow now, and again, this has obviously been an incredible, incredibly informative for me and the fans of Scream Factory, and of course Arrow, which I think, and I'm not just saying this because you work for Arrow now. I think nobody really does it better presentation
Yeah.
wise. There's a formality to their releases. There's just beauty to them. And what's so great now is, I think you'll agree, with the format of 4K being region free, the borders don't matter. I think Arrow, you guys as a company, when you put out City of the Living Dead, it's like, hey, the cauldron's nice, you can get that, but this is what ours looks like. And they have companies. Is that something you can kind of speak on from the business side? That does the company recognize, hey, there are no boundaries anymore? Of course, we have to sell this as a region B title for things like this, but of course, our titles, we're competing with American companies with their versions. Is that something that is actively discussed, or is it an understood thing within the company?
I would constantly use Arrow as an example when I was at Chat Factory about how they're, doing really nice, slip covers or things like that. And I would hear, oh, well, they can do that because they're a smaller company. We're a bigger company and we can't do that. And I think it was kind of a cop out. And, within the last year or so, the people that run the Shout website have done a amazing job of creating these packs that have stickers and I guess the release for UHF that's coming out as a rubber remote control. And the website really has embraced the idea of doing something bigger and better that Chat Factory wouldn't do on the releases that go into retail. And that was another reason why I wanted to work at Arrow. Is I agree with you. I think they do it better than anybody. And I would have said that if I was still at Chat Factory, because it's just true. um again, talking about budgets, when I would clean a movie and remove dirt and scratches, you can only spend this much, you can't go over this. So there were things that I would have loved to have fixed that we couldn't because we were spending too much money. And at Arrow, it doesn't seem to be an issue. And I think that's why they're killing it.
Mhm. Incredible. Well, I'm so happy that you're with Arrow, and I'm looking forward to the stuff that they're gonna put out this year. And I haven't picked it up, but like, I'm seeing that Chucky box set, the Arrow Chucky
Yeah.
box set. Oh, it's gorgeous. I was so close to getting that blue store version, but I never did. I already had all the Scream Factory ones, but there's no denying I've got the carry. Uh just
Well,
a
that
great.
that's basically the release where I was helping them because I had done all of the work, and we just sort of had a conversation about what if, and it happened. So
Incredible, incredible.
yeah.
Well, Cliff, I'm so happy for you, man. You're a veteran
Thanks.
in this. You're at Arrow now, which is, I think, probably the perfect home for you. It sounds like it's, by film lovers for film lovers, and
Yeah,
just
it
excited.
really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for the rest of the year. And oh, I got to compliment you on were you at the company? Well, I don't know if you had any involvement with it, but I will say my favorite physical media releases this year was definitely the Conan Chronicles. I mean, just a beautiful release. Were you involved in that in any capacity? No.
No, I had actually licensed Conan the Barbarian when I was at Chat Factory, and we couldn't get access to the negative because Technicolor was holding it ransom. So what Technicolor was doing is they were saying, "Well, we have the negative, and if you want it, you have to do all your film restoration work here." And I was like, what are you talking about? You don't own the movie. And so I think Universal put their foot down, because we were able to get, the negative for Halloween 2, Halloween 3. They got Conan. Yeah, it was amazing that a company was holding the negative hostage.
Jesus.
I mean, it's just some of the things that happen in this business are just fucking crazy.
Well, I tell you what, thank you guys for listening.
Sure.
Cliff, again, man, I can't tell you. I don't know if you realize just how much genuine light and answers you gave for most of us fans who are just, we don't want to be nosy, but we just like to, we want to understand, I think. And the things that you said really paint a picture for us on what it's really like on the business side of being in a company like this, and the realities, quite frankly, of the decisions you have to make and things like that. So I
Yeah,
just
the reality is it is a business, and as much as we love what we do, sometimes we have to do it within the parameters of making money.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
Cliff, is there anywhere that you want? Is there anything you want to promote and or pages that you have, social media that you want people to follow you at if they're not
uh,
already?
I stay off social media. I got to. I mean, occasionally I'll comment on Blu-ray.com, but that's
Under an
this.
alias or as
No,
yourself?
it's under my name.
Oh
But
man.
no, I try and stay off it. But yeah, just watch Arrow. We've got an amazing year, and we've got next year planned out already. It's going to be pretty amazing.
Oh man. I know, and I know you can't talk about any of that, but I am so looking forward to it and what Arrow has to offer. So
Yeah.
thank you guys for watching, and we'll see y'all next time. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.